organized within the Trust course here at the American University of Armenia. Thank you all for joining. I'd like to give a brief description of the Trust conference. It's a student conference that is held annually within the Trust course at the AUA. It's a student conference, and it has generally two components. One where we have guest speakers presenting their ideas and insights and sharing their experience on trust-related issues with our students. And the second part is where students present the data and analysis that they have conducted throughout the entire semester. So today we have the guest speaker part, and we are privileged to welcome three distinguished speakers to our conference. So first we have Ms. Maria Papacosta, who will enlighten us with the profound nuances of trust, how it is cultivated within ourselves and how it's extended to others. Following Maria, we will have Dr. Simon Clark, whose expertise lies in exploring trust within people and the government. And lastly, we will have Professor Theophanis Varvoglis, who will share with us his insights of trust within the corporate walls. Just about the technical part, after each presentation, which will last some 10 to 12 minutes, we will have opportunity to ask questions to our speakers. And as we have shared with you earlier, there is a Google Doc shared document where you can add the questions and we will address them to the speaker. So I encourage all of you to be very active and to engage in discussions with our speakers and use this opportunity to gain more knowledge on trust-related topics. So I would like to suggest to start with our first speaker. Maria, you can share your presentation. I will briefly introduce her background. So Maria is the co-founder of the MSC Marketing Bureau. She is also a leadership presence coach and researcher and an acclaimed personal branding strategist. She specializes in supporting leaders and professional speakers to enhance their presence, develop authentic personal brands, and communicate with impact. With a track record of collaborating with major companies around the world, Maria has specialized in areas such as leadership presence and influence programs and vision and values design and implementation processes. She has also led initiatives focusing on building trust and enhancing communication within organizations. In recent years, Maria has provided coaching to numerous TED and TEDx speakers. She holds a Master of Science degree from the Aston University and a Bachelor of Science degree from London Metropolitan University. And she also has a specialization in inspired leadership from Case Western Reserve University. Also some key information and figures. Maria's personal branding workshop has been recognized in the world's top 3 brand development programs by global gurus for 4 consecutive years over the past 4 years. And last year, Thinkers 360 ranked her in the top 10 global thought leaders on personal branding. So I invite Maria to start her presentation.
Thank you, Datev. Hello, everyone. You seem like a really nice crowd. Thank you, Professor Varvoglis, for the kind invitation. Trust is a very dear subject to me because it's about building bridges, not just with others, but primarily with ourselves. And I'll start with a quote from Maya Angelou. She said that I don't trust people who don't love themselves and tell me I love you. There is an African saying which is, be careful when a naked person offers you a shirt. She also said that I don't trust people who don't laugh, but that's another story. We'll get there another time. So trust is the basis of almost everything that we do. It's the foundation on which our relationships, laws, and even contracts are built. As Professor Varvoglis has already told you, most likely, and I'm sure he will during his presentation, trust is a win-win situation. You can't establish trust otherwise. And this is important to understand because trust is the conduit of influence. You can't have influence if you don't establish trust to some extent. So to me, I find it easier to examine trust as expressed in 2 levels. One level is the individual level, which has to do with trust among people, whether it's friends, families, colleagues. The second level has to do with trust in relation to institutions and organizations. Although the foundation, trust, it remains the same, the building process, the maintenance process, the communication process, and the restoration process when needed of trust varies between these two levels. Today, my focus will be on the first level, the individual, and primarily. And here, trust begins with self-trust. So remember Angelou's quote, "We don't trust those who don't trust themselves." So self-trust is not about the trust you have in yourself to know all the answers or that you're never going to fail. It's not about treating yourself as a superhero. Self-trust is the firm reliance on the integrity we have of ourselves. It's a development process that requires clarity, commitment, self-awareness, and above everything, an open mindset. Research has shown that people who trust themselves, they exhibit self-trust. They also exhibit certain characteristics among them, certain common traits. So first of all, they have clarity and confidence in their decisions. And this is basically, they're making decisions and not choices. So what's the difference? Making a decision means that I'm putting thought into it, and I evaluate how this decision is going to affect my present situation and my future self or situation. Choices are mostly based on convenience factors. So you just pick whatever is more convenient for you without putting too much thought into it. They also view failure as a learning experience. So, they don't start crying that I failed, what am I going to do? No, they take lessons from their failures and they, correct their behaviors and their actions along the way. They are also highly self-aware, which is very, very difficult to achieve because in reality, most of us are either not self-aware at all. We don't bother to spend any time with ourselves, let alone self-analyze, in depth at least. And the remaining of us, we just think that we are self-aware, but we're doing it wrong. The main word in self-aware is not the awareness part. It's actually a hidden word, and that's called action. So when you do your SWOT analysis and you define your strengths and your areas for development, the opportunities, the threats, that's a great part of the process. But if you leave it at it, it's just thinking. It's what you do with it that makes you move forward, progress, and evolve. What actions are you taking? So you spotted your weakness. What are you going to do about it? They also view the past as experience and the future as opportunity. They have this more optimistic approach to things. And more importantly, they realize that what got me here will not get me there. So they realize that they need to change their tactics and sometimes even their behaviors. And above everything, despite being last on my list, is that they trust others. If you don't trust others, how do you expect others to trust you? So to me, self-trust is having clear values. If you don't identify your values, you're basically lost in this crowded world. And our values extend to being our behaviors. So that's why they're very important. Not only they have clear values, so in self-trust, but we also need to set clear boundaries. What do we tolerate and what we don't tolerate? And doing the honorable thing for yourself and others. So it's about believing in our abilities, honoring our commitments, and staying true to our values. That's how, when we trust ourselves, we radiate authenticity, confidence, and we set the stage for meaningful conversations and collaborations. So trust doesn't end with self-trust. It extends outwards. It shapes the dynamics in our relationships, teams, organizations. And it begins with an intentional effort and commitment to fostering such environments where trust can actually be built. I'll show you an interesting statistic here. This is a research by PricewaterhouseCoopers. They did a trust survey among organizations around the world. This is from 2023. And what they found is that 86% of companies say they trust their employees, which is great, okay? But 60% of employees say they trust their companies. So this is a bit strange and not very exciting. There is this trust barometer by Edelman, and in 2024, they identified the year 2024 as innovation in peril. And this is due to the ongoing challenges of distrust, polarization, and the decline of authority figures. The various advancements that we had over the past years, or concepts like diversity and inclusion, sustainability, artificial intelligence, these are being met with resistance and skepticism. And a significant amount of our population, they exhibit strong signs of distrust towards established systems and institutions. The next statistic is even worse. Sorry, I have a question, it seems.
Yeah, so it seems that there's a 26% gap between these two. In your opinion, what's causing the gap between companies that they trust their employees and employees that trust their companies? What's the gap between them?
What are the factors that
Yes,
contribute to
correct.
the... Right. Well, I was going to get there, but I'll get there anyway. My opinion is that we focus too much on command and control, or too much on bureaucratic, in under quote, structures like processes, procedures, right? Which are all necessary. But what we haven't been taught how to do, and we were not used into doing, especially in organizational environments, is tapping into people's emotions. We don't tap into the emotions. And it's, human beings, we are creatures of emotions. So everything is great. But if you don't tap into the emotions, then you're lost. Also, we talk about things like diversity and inclusion. It's not about inclusion in reality. Being included is not what we're after. Included means you accept me in your next party. Does that mean that I belong there? Not necessarily. So to me, it's not about inclusion, it's about belongingness. So it has to do more with emotions rather than control structures and statistics and data. And the way we communicate and the way we do things, it's more on that side rather than on the emotional side. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes, fully. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Now, the next statistic, which you're going to love even more, this comes from Gallup's State of the Global Workplace report for 2023. They found that 23% of employees worldwide feel engaged in their work. This means 77% of employees are not engaged. They are disengaged, right? Basically, primarily for the reasons that I explained before, but also because of the trust issue, because trust acts as a catalyst for collaboration, for innovation, and for high performance teamwork. We can't have teamwork if we don't have trust. And trust also taps upon the emotional things that I described before. It makes you feel empowered, and it enhances belongingness. There is a long discussion about psychological safety over the past years, which is great because it's about trying, failing, being allowed to try and fail, being allowed to speak up and express your opinion. So all these latest trends are very, very positive for establishing trust among individuals and especially within organizations, but we have a long way to go. Frances Frey and Anne Morris have a very simple model about how to build trust, but its power lies in its simplicity. So what they're basically saying is that to build trust, you need three things. You need logic, you need authenticity, and you need empathy. Now, logic is very straightforward. Whatever it is that you're saying or doing, you have to have some reasoning behind it. It has to be sound. Authenticity is a bit more difficult because it's about showing to the world who you really are and not imitating to be someone else. And not just about who you are, about your ideas, having the courage to express your ideas, to stand up for yourself, to stand up for your colleagues, your friends. And empathy, always to my surprise, is the most difficult one because we rarely show to the people that we interact with that we truly care about them. It may be easier with friends, but we don't really do it with our colleagues. We don't show them that we care about their success and their well-being. So now what, you'll ask me? If I can leave you with a tip on how to build trust, is to lead with integrity, communicate effectively, and be accountable. What does that mean? Lead with integrity. Define your values, define who you are. What behaviors you want to have, what is the better version of yourself that you want to create. You are not who you are today. You are the person who will become in the future, and you design that person. Define your boundaries, what you tolerate and what you don't tolerate. Communicate effectively, and I use 3 words to make it simple. Listen. We have 2 verbs. We have hear and listen. Hear, you just hear noises and sounds. Listen, you truly understand what the other person is telling you. Speak up for yourself and for others. Express your opinions, express your ideas, be transparent, be open. Recognize, acknowledge those who have helped you along the way. Acknowledge those who are successful. Acknowledge those who are excellent. We rarely do that. Accountability, it's all about responsibility. It's about making decisions and not convenience choices. It's about consistency. We are what we repeatedly do. So if we repeatedly, miss our deadlines, this is how people are going to think about us, that we continually miss our deadlines. Ask for help. It's a primary pillar in accountability. And although it's the most important one, people are afraid to ask for help. It makes them feel weak and vulnerable. On the contrary, you can go fast alone, but you cannot go far alone. So you need to ask for help. And by the way, by asking help from others, you allow them to ask help from you as well. And the final one, sharing is caring. I'm sure you've heard of that before. Share with people your expertise. Share your availability. I'm here for you if you need me. Share and care for others. How else can you possibly build trust if you're not there for them? Trust takes a long time and a lot of personal interaction to be built. So trust is about building bridges, not barriers, bridges that connect us, inspire us, and empower us and others to reach new heights. Thank you. Questions?
Thank you very much, Maria. I think it's important for students at the young age to understand how building trust and cultivating it within themselves can be later reflected in relations with institutions and trust with institutions, as they are also about to enter the career and start working. So I will just remind our students that since we have time limits to coordinate the questions, I will just read the questions that you have posted in this shared document. Maybe we'll have time for 3 to 4 questions. So the first one is, what do you think about AI helping a person to build a trustworthy bridge? How can we promote the culture of sharing the thoughts? Yeah.
With AI, how can we use AI to build trust, basically? That's a good question. Well, I would treat AI as any kind of data. So if I want to build trust with any of you, initially what I would like to do is find out more about who you are, what you like, what you don't like, or what you do in life. And AI can give us such information about organizations, about situations, about people nowadays. I'm not sure I'm the right kind of person to answer this question, but I think I would treat AI as data primarily. Other than that, I'm not sure how I could use AI to build trust. But I know that people are much afraid of AI and they don't have trust in AI, which is another issue.
Thank you. Yes, that's a rather big area that still needs exploration. So another question that students are asking is, how can a person identify and define their personal values to strengthen self-trust?
Oh, that's a long discussion, but a good question, very good question. You need to think of yourself, how do you want to be in 5-10 years from now? How do you dress? What do you do as a living? How do you communicate with other people? How do you envision yourself, right? And then think of the behaviors that you want. I want to be kind. I want to be honest. I want to be fair. All these different words. And then write down that to me, these are my values. These are the things that I will live my life by. These are my commandments. These are my rules. These are things that I do not negotiate as much as possible, at least, right? But it's a personal journey and it takes a lot of time to define your values. And don't worry, you don't need to make it right firsthand. You're not going to be examined on it. And most of us, we've developed our values through experience and communicating with other people, and our failures have also helped us define our values. But the sooner you do this journey, the better it's going to be for you, because you know who you are. But values without boundaries, make sure that you do both. This is what I tolerate and this is what I don't tolerate. So you need both parts of the equation.
Okay, thank you. Another question, since you have introduced this statistics and interesting data about companies and people, this question is, do you think that being disengaged and not having trust in companies are interconnected?
Yes, highly. And it also has to do with many different reasons and factors that all come down to trust. And I'll give you an example. Over the past few years, I've worked with many companies. One of the most common concerns I hear from employees is that management has promised us this and this and this and that, but they never deliver their promises. They never keep their promises. So why should I keep my promise? And that's a recurring trend over the past years that at least I have experienced with organizations. And this has to do with trust. It's not that they're not willing to trust management, but management is making promises that they cannot keep. And I think Simon's presentation about the political structure is going to answer your questions much, much better than mine in that area.
Thank you. And maybe one last question. How can we set boundaries that might be unacceptable to the other person without damaging the already built trust?
So how do we set boundaries that
might be
not
unacceptable? Yeah.
Yes, but these are our boundaries. This is about our wants and our desires. So let me give you an example. If I always say yes, which I do, by the way, but I don't tell anyone, right? I'm a yes person. Whatever people say, I go like, yes, whatever, yes, right? I haven't set my boundaries, and people can take advantage of me and exploit my kindness. It's my boundaries and my tolerance level. So if I decide that I want to, be more picky about the yes that I say, and I have to start saying no, and I set that boundary, then it really doesn't matter if you like it or not, because these are my boundaries. This is how I want to live my life. Does that make sense? No?
I personally agree. I hope
Well,
students too.
it's not
Yeah.
about, pleasing people
Yeah.
in the boundary sense. It's about what's right for us and for our lives.
Yeah, and trust is a two-way relationship, so it should be accepted two-way. And one last question the students asked, also I raised this question. So you said that if I trust myself, I should trust others as well. So is having boundaries and being cautious sign of not having self-trust? So is having boundaries and being cautious sign of not having trust?
Okay, boundaries and being cautious are two different things. Boundaries is in the most simple way how I want to live my life, what I tolerate and what I don't tolerate it. So it's a decision. Being cautious has to do more with primarily with the biases that we have and our past experiences. That it's like a defense mechanism that protects us. So I got bit by a dog, so now I'm afraid of dog and I'm being cautious towards dogs, but that doesn't mean that all dogs are going to bite me. So two different things. But yes, we do need to trust others in order for them to trust us back. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So we have to take
Okay.
some risks. In my case, what I do, I say, I'll trust you until you prove me wrong and let it go. Hope that helps. Not the most professional approach, but it's an easier approach for me.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maria. I think it was very insightful presentation, and also the question of answers. I love seeing students being so engaged. I suggest we now move to other speaker, Dr. Simon Clark.